Good morning. In this third session of this workshop on commercial courts, we have with us Honorable Justice Prathama M. Singh. A great pleasure and I deem it an honor to introduce Justice Prathama M. Singh. Throughout her journey as a student, as a lawyer, and as a judge, excellence Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, please. You know, your journey throughout has been excellent as such. Joined the bar in the year 1991, was designated as senior advocate in the year 2013, and elevated as Judge Delhi High Court in the year 2017. Scholar and scholarship have been the insignia of Justice Singh for that matter. She is a decorated soldier of the legal fraternity and a judicial laureate in the domain of intellectual property rights. And therefore, this morning, this specific important area of intellectual property, disputes relating to trademarks and designs, and equally the disputes relating to copyright and patent, would be the coverage of this particular session by Justice Singh. I have great pleasure in presenting to you all Justice Singh. May I request you to kindly start with the session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta, for your kind introduction. A very good morning. Before I start my session, I wanted to know a couple of things.
Yes.
The audience consists of how is this being beamed to the audience?
Through the YouTube, please.
Okay. And this is for commercial court judges or for all of them?
See, this is for all additional district judges of the state of Punjab and Haryana.
Okay.
And those who are presently also holding the commercial courts. And we have also opened this particular session, and the entire workshop for that matter, to all the officers of different judicial academies across the country.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, I will be, before I start my presentation, so this is for 1 hour, isn't it, Dr. Gupta?
That's right, that's right.
Okay. So we won't be able to take any questions because it's a unilateral thing.
I wish it could be done, but that's probably not possible.
Okay, perfect. So a very good morning to all viewers and to all the judicial officers who are watching this program today. It is my distinct pleasure to address all of you under the aegis of the Chandigarh Judicial Academy. Dr. Balram Gupta has been very kind, and I accepted his invitation to speak to you all about intellectual property and what are the latest developments. I can tell you one thing, that 1 hour is too little a time to speak fully about intellectual property, but we'll try and cover as much as we can. And what I would comment to all of you is to, after getting a bird's eye view, maybe look up some of the judgments, etc., which I will be mentioning in my presentation, some of the latest ones. So I'm going to cover a large domain, but I think the last few slides will be very important owing to some very recent developments that have taken place in India with the abolition of the Intellectual Property Appellate Board, which is by the Tribunal Reforms Act of 2021. The IPAB has been abolished, And because of that, the manner in which intellectual property cases are now going to be dealt with across the country is going to be changing. And I would like to highlight to you all what is the latest development in Delhi High Court in this regard, so that this can be kind of a guidance and look for something for all of you to look up to in terms of how to manage the new kinds of litigation that are going to be coming before you all. So I'm going to I would like to share my PowerPoint presentation. So I'm not sure how to do that. So is there anyone, Shivam, can you help me with it? No. So what do we do here?
This one.
No, that shares.
Share tray.
No. Share tray is what would require?
That.
Okay.
This is
Without a PowerPoint presentation, this will be difficult. So just let me figure it out in a minute. Sorry?
You can go ahead through this one, open your Teams app.
No, it's already there. No, I'm already there. Dr. Gupta, do you have someone there who can tell you how to share screen? Because in Teams, I haven't done it before.
Just a moment, I would kindly.
I'm used to doing it on Cisco and on Zoom, but I haven't done it on Teams before.
Why say?
Where is our PPT? Yeah, this one.
This one is the PPT. Can you just stop spotlight me do it once?
No. All right. While we are going to sort this out, I will start by saying, as you're all aware, intellectual property and IPR as such, everyone is always under the impression that it is a kind of very complex litigation. Why should we all be doing it? Because there are very few cases. So my first message to all of you is that intellectual property is a subject which is very close to everybody's daily life, whether it's the newspapers that we read in the morning, whether it's the television that we watch, the books that we read, the telephones that we use, the automobiles that we drive, almost everything is based on intellectual property. There is not a single thing that can be done without creativity and innovation. And the first message, therefore, I would like to give all of you is that intellectual property is important for us, not merely because we are lawyers or judges, but because it is part of everyday human everyday life. And we should stop thinking of it as a very complex subject matter or very complicated, which we cannot understand or anything like that. We should be open in in the manner in which we take up intellectual property cases and decide them and decide the issues that arise in them. The foremost thing I would like to say is, as you all know, there are various forms of intellectual property, whether it is trademarks, copyrights, patents, designs, geographical indications, plant varieties, or any such form of intellectual property. Some of these are protected under statute and some of them are protected under common law. We also have what is called trade secrets, which are protected under common law. The principles of trademarks and copyrights and these related rights are all very well settled and well established. India has had a very long jurisprudence in this
Just a moment.
Yes.
it has to be linked from your side. My technical person is here to assist.
Good morning, Your Lordship.
Yes.
If we go upstairs, if we go see the upper form, it is camera, mic, and then it is share. Camera, mic, and share. So
Yes.
if you click the share,
Yes.
then it will come a screen. You have to share your screen. Click the screen share. Camera, mic, share, then screen share.
It's not coming on my thing.
Ma'am, do we have any technical person there with you so that I can help him?
Ma'am, usually it's share content, but now it's showing close share tray. So it's showing a share tray. Usually in Teams, it's share content.
Yeah,
Right.
it's either shared content. Yes, we are able to see it from here. What issue is coming up there?
In this, it's showing share tray instead of share content.
Okay. Let me check that then. Let me check that. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, let me check that and then I'll see what I can do about it.
Okay. Right. So as we move forward, the kind of intellectual properties that are there, as I've already mentioned to you, there are statutorily, we have about 5 or 6 intellectual properties, 6 to be precise. The remaining 7 to be precise. The remaining forms of IPR are all non-statutory intellectual property. What is the importance of the value of intellectual property? Let us understand that first to be able to appreciate the importance of it. Let us take, for example, an iPhone. The manufacturing cost of an iPhone is approximately maybe $250 to $300, and the actual manufacturer earns about $8 to $10 every year for every device. But the retail price could be much above $900 to $1,000. So while the components and the manufacturing cost could be less than $300, the sale price is about $1,000, which is more than 3.5 times. So the entire remaining value, apart from the value of the components, etc., is the value of the intellectual property. The value for intellectual property, therefore, is much, much more than the value for the raw materials, the components, the manufacturing cost, and all that. Why is it so? Because to be able to put all those components together and to make them function in a particular manner, there is a lot of research and innovation that is required. Without that, it is not possible for anyone to be using an iPhone with all the features that it has. It requires enormous amount of innovation, enormous amount of research, long hours of engineers who put in a lot of work, and only then they're able to come up with such kind of products. Yes, please. Okay, can you see the screen now?
Yes, that is absolutely visible.
Okay, so now give it to me. So these are my slides to show you how intellectual property is a part of daily life, whether it is starting with the way we brush our teeth or we use newspapers. There are various intellectual properties that are involved in all this. And I believe that the way we live is only with intellectual property all around us. Please see as you go by how everything that we use on a daily basis has intellectual property in it. Whether it's brands, whether it's designs, whether it is trademarks, whether it is logos, every day there is copyright in applications, the clothes we wear, everywhere there is intellectual property, there is designing, there is logos, there is marks, there is geographical indications, For example, Pashmina shawl, Kanjivaram saris, these are all protected in intellectual property. Whether it's the food we eat, food has patents, it has trademarks, copyrights, trade dress, designs, copyright in recipe books, plant varieties, various varieties of seeds which are sown in the country by farmers. So there's hardly anything that we do in our daily life which does not have intellectual property. The patents in the car, automobile engines, artistic works and logos, the music that we listen to when we are driving to work, there is copyright in musical works. There is a whole jurisprudence of compulsory licensing in this. The computers that we use, copyright in the software programs, television channels. We today watch Netflix, Amazon, everything as we, end our day. These are the books that we read. There is copyright in books. So that's the message I want to give, that IPR permeates our daily life. And there is not much of life that is there without IPR. And this is something we don't realize unless and until we start thinking in this way. So going back to intellectual property, 1883 is when the first convention on industrial property was started in the world. And that has moved from 1883, 1891, 1967, the Patent Cooperation Treaty in 1970, the WIPO being established, and finally the TRIPS agreement. Now, I'm not going to go into these details because it can take a long presentation. The three basic principles of these treaties and conventions is that there is a principle of national treatment, meaning thereby we treat foreign IP owners and Indian IP owners on the same platform. We do not discriminate between foreign and Indian IP owners. There is automatic protection for most of the intellectual property protected works. For example, we, under the law of passing off, we can protect foreign trademarks. Copyright need not be registered in any country. It can be protected without registration. So suppose there is a movie made in India, if there is a pirated copy being sold in Canada, in America, in Europe, the copyright owner can take immediate action without a registration. The principle of independence of protection is that the work is independent of the country from where it has been created. So therefore, these are very basic jurisprudential principles in intellectual property. And if we go forward, I would say that the TRIPS agreement of 1995 completely changed the way in which the world looks at intellectual property. The principles of IPR now are uniform across the world. And these are the various types of IPR which I just mentioned. Okay, one very big important objection which normally you hear in conversations is that, patents are no good. The foreigners take away haldi, they take away neem. This kind of miscommunication exists. So I want to state that, while there were patent applications filed in Europe and America for preparations made from neem and turmeric, the Indian CSIR was able to oppose these patents, place the documents relating to traditional knowledge in these patent offices. In fact, these patents were not granted by those countries. And this led to the creation of what is called the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, TKDL, which has now digitized millions and millions and millions of, you can call them materials, scriptures, all kinds of traditional material which was available in India on our various medicinal practices, etc., which helped us in creating this library. And this library has now been shared across all patent offices in the world to be able to oppose any grant of patents to traditional knowledge. Now, there are lakhs of trademarks which are filed every year. I think as per the recent figures, the number of trademarks which are filed have crossed more than 4 to 5 lakhs. And it is a huge number. And 80% of the trademarks which are registered are belonging to Indian businesses and Indian IP owners, which is a big thing because it just shows that within India, our businesses, our traders, everybody is very, very conscious of their trademark rights. Now, let us look at the broad framework for protecting intellectual property. The first framework, of course, is legislature. They are the ones who enact the various statutes. We have the administrative machinery, which involves like the trademark office, the patent office, the copyright office. They're all now under the Controller General of Patents and Trademarks. We have the departments in the government, like the police, customs, drug authorities, etc., who take care of various aspects of intellectual property. And of course, the judiciary. And after the Commercial Courts Act has come, the judiciary is playing a very important role in protecting intellectual property. We have the commercial courts at the district level. Then we have the commercial divisions in the High Court, and then the commercial appellate divisions at the division bench. So these is the three-tier mechanism. And finally, of course, the Supreme Court, if and when the matters are reached, are taken there. So the three-tier system is the basic system that operates in intellectual property. In the judiciary at the commercial court level, all the civil litigation is filed. The criminal litigation relating to offences of trademarks and copyrights, patents, there is no criminal offence. Infringement is not a criminal offence of a patent. But for trademarks and copyrights, there is infringement, which can be, it can be an offence also to do a false representation of a trademark. So the criminal and the civil courts primarily handle the intellectual property cases, but 95% is mostly in the civil courts, i.e. the commercial courts. Now, everyone knows what a trademark is. I think I'm going to skip this. What are the various principles which have been laid down by, the judicial interpretations? There is the principle of trans-border reputation, which is very important because a large number of foreign trademarks were being registered by Indian companies without the permission of the trademark owner. And it was felt that there needs to be a proper system which is evolved wherein well-known foreign trademarks are protected in India. So there is this entire jurisprudence about trans-border reputation, well-known trademarks. Let us look at, for example, infringement in respect of dissimilar goods. Suppose someone uses the trademark Philips, which is used for electronic goods, for, let us say, a bed mattress or for a pressure cooker. Should we allow it? No. There are judgments which say so. The Mercedes-Benz judgment, which deals with dilution, is one of the most well-known judgments. Benz is, of course, used for luxury cars, but when it was used on undergarments, the court said, no, we cannot permit this. Then there is the entire jurisprudence relating to comparative advertising. As you've seen, the Surf and the, Procter Gamble, Rin and Surf and Dettol, these are the Colgate and the Pepsodent. There are all these comparative advertising trade, cases which have developed a large amount of jurisprudence. Basically, these judgments hold that it is not permissible for anyone to, compare a product and say that product is bad, my product is good. While you can say your product is good, you cannot disparage or defame the other person's trademark or product. So this is the jurisprudence of comparative advertising. Then, of course, there is parallel importation, where there's a new level of jurisprudence wherein, suppose second-hand goods are brought into India. This happened in the case of Samsung. Samsung photocopiers were being brought into the country from, these were genuine products, but what was happening was the Samsung company said that these are not meant for being sold in India, and these are second-hand products. We cannot give warranty, and therefore these should not be sold. So the court, the division bench of Delhi High Court, held that you cannot stop a genuine product from being brought into the country. But what can be done is that the the person who's importing it has to make sure that when he is selling it, he tells the customer that this is a second-hand product, we do not give warranties to it, and he should not in any manner use the trademark so as to make the customer feel that this is a genuine first-hand product. So long as they don't do that, parallel importation is permissible. So there are several judgments of the Supreme Court and High Courts on trademarks. I mean, this is one of the most well-known judgment of the Supreme Court on passing off. In fact, this is a judgment of Justice Sikri, who is going to be speaking now, I think, in the next session to you all. This is a judgment called Syed Mohinuddin versus Sulochana Bai. There was a Tamil Nadu trademark in Tamil Nadu called Iruttu Kadai, and this was a specific halwa which was being made, and someone else started using Iruttu Kadai halwa, and the defendant opened what is called Tirunelveli Iruttu Kadai halwa. So the Supreme Court said that the right given by registration are always subject to the rights of the prior user. The prior user is superior to that of registration, and just because the defendant has a registration, he cannot copy the mark of an earlier user which has a reputation, and the court held in favor of the plaintiff. There was another case called Darzi for a tailor. So the court said that even in this case, Darzi, though being an Urdu word, is not a usual word for a tailor, and the manner in which the defendant used it would make it confusing, and therefore the injunction was granted. This was another Supreme Court judgment, Prius Auto versus Toyota. In this, the trademark was Prius, which is used for a hybrid car, and Prius Auto was a Karolbagh-based automotive dealer who was calling it Prius Auto Parts. So when the plaintiff filed a suit, the court analyzed and said that Prius is a dictionary word, and when the defendant adopted the mark in April 2001, the Toyota's mark was not known in India, and therefore the Supreme Court held in favor of the defendant and held that every foreign mark cannot be protected in India. It has to be shown that it had a reputation when the defendant adopted the mark. Now, this was another trademark case on pharmaceutical products, Glow Eye and Glow Tab. The court said that this is meant for eye drops, and it is a nutraceutical product, and the difference between Glow Eye and Glow Tab is not enough, and the plaintiff was granted an injunction. In Wortman versus P. Mehta, one of the first cases where heavy damages was awarded to the tune of more than 2 crore rupees. In fact, the High Court followed the decision in Rooks versus Bernard and held that the defendant was making counterfeit products and is therefore liable to pay punitive damages. This is a new judgment of Bacardi, and this was against Bacardi versus Baheti. Baheti was using it for a non-alcoholic drink, and Bacardi was an alcoholic drink called Breezer. Breezer and Freeze was being used in the similar way, and the court granted an interim injunction restraining Baheti from using the trademark Freeze Mix and the trade dress. The bottle was also similar in this case. Now let's look at copyright. Copyright is meant to be, protecting the author. There are various forms of copyright works: literary, dramatic, musical, say sound recording, computer program, cinematograph work, etc. It encourages people to, create original works and not copy others. Copyright doesn't mean the right to copy. It is a right which is given to a creator against copying. So a lot of times people say, oh, copyright is a right to copy. It is not. Now, some of the important judgments under copyright, this is a case which most of us have heard of normally. And, in Delhi University, there was a photocopy shop which was photocopying some chapters from different textbooks and making a case mat and giving it to the students. And the question was whether this is fair use or not. The court held that because it is for educational purposes and it did not amount to infringement of copyright. Because it was fairness, it is qualitative and quantitative, but the court felt it was not copyright violation. This is a new judgment, IPRS versus Entertainment Network. This was rendered by the Delhi High Court in 2021. And the question here was, when an FM radio channel is playing the music, whether the copyright is to be taken from the owner of the song, I mean the lyrics, or only the owner of the entire sound recording. The court held that the underlying works are not utilized, only the sound recording is utilized, and therefore the permission from the author of the literary work, i.e. the lyrics, need not be taken. Let's now come to patents. There are three main steps that are to be taken care of when we look at patents. It has to be new, it has to be inventive, it has to have industrial application. Now, what is meant by new? New is what is not known before. If it is known or published in any form, it is not new. If it's used in a seminar or a conference, if it's in a newspaper or a trade journal, or even in a cartoon clip, it is not new. What is obvious? Obvious is adding of sodium and chloride. Sodium is known, chloride is known. Can someone imagine that adding of sodium and chloride would lead to common salt? Was it predictable? If it is not predictable to a chemist who knows the subject, it is not obvious. Obvious is from the eyes of a person who is skilled in the art. It could be a basic undergraduate or a postgraduate in the relevant field. Need not be a PhD, need not be a scientist. Someone who has basic knowledge of the subject, if he can think about the invention, then it is obvious. Otherwise, it's not. Industrial applicability. The invention should not be theoretical. It cannot be academic. It has to have practical application, economic advantage. It has to be cost effective as compared to the existing knowledge. Then, if you satisfy all these three conditions, the patent is granted. Every patent has a patent specification. It ends with the claims. The claims defines the monopoly which is granted. And if the defendant's product is falling within the claims, it is infringement. The defendant can file a suit. When a case is filed for infringement of patent, the defendant can argue that the patent is invalid and file a counterclaim. In that case, normally patent suits are filed in the commercial courts at the district judge level. None of the intellectual property matters can be filed below the district judge. It has to be an additional district judge or a district judge or a commercial court at the district judge level. It cannot go to the civil judge or a sub-judge or a munsif. These matters don't go there because there are specific provisions in the Trademark and Patent Act, in the Patent Act and the Trademark Act that say that these can be only entertained at the district level. Now, a large number of judges have asked this question as to whether the judge has to have technical knowledge. According to me, most judges did not have technical knowledge to deal with IPR matters. Any judge who handles civil or criminal cases can also deal with patent cases. But once you handle one or two cases, you will get the basic knowledge and it is easy from there on. So what can a defendant do in a patent infringement case? He or she can show that the patent is not new, it is obvious, and that there is no practical application to the invention. The threshold for practical application is very low. Even if there is a hope that this can have a decent exploitation, it is enough. And it need not be a very high threshold. If the invention is good, then injunction is usually granted. The judge has to merely see the invention and the documents which the defendant shows to show whether it was known in the earlier time prior to the patent. If the judge feels that no, this was not known, this was quite new when the patent was granted, then the injunction is usually granted. Usually in an infringement of a patent case, an affidavit is filed by an expert and the judge has to look at the plaintiff's affidavit, the defendant's affidavit, and accept the view that appears more plausible. You can also order a short trial for one expert each, and you can decide the matter. Now, there are a large number of patent judgments which have come out in the last few years. In the area of pharmaceuticals, there is enormous amount of jurisprudence. The basic question is, if the molecule or the pharmaceutical product is new, then injunction is granted. But if the patent is invalid, if the patent was of a known product, then injunction is not granted. Now, this can be a little complex. This is Novartis versus Union of India. Let me tell you what is the concept of Section 3D, which is very important because that is the main section which is considered when we deal with pharmaceuticals. Section 3D of the Patent Act says that if there is one known pharmaceutical substance, you've got one patent over it, you cannot get a second patent over the same thing by simply tweaking it a little bit here and there. Let me give you an example. In the case of Novartis, there was one cancer medicine which had a patent in the US and it was not filed in India. However, Novartis said, we have come up with a new salt form of this molecule and we want a patent for that. The question was, in Section 3D, it says that if there is a new form of a substance which is known, then unless and until you show very high efficacy in the human body, you cannot claim a patent in that. You cannot extend the patent by simply saying that I have tweaked it, I have changed it a little bit, so give me a new patent. The term of a patent is only 20 years. So what happens is in a gap of 4 or 5 years, again and again, more and more patents are filed. This is called the concept of evergreening. This is not permissible under Indian patent law. This new form, salt form or any other form can be patented only if it shows very high efficacy. Unless and until very high efficacy is shown, you can get only one patent for one invention. That is the law in India. Section 3D, Novartis, Roche versus Cipla, all of them say the same thing. So I'm okay if you all wish to have this presentation. You can ask Dr. Gupta, it can be circulated to you. So I'm going to move on now to a next subject because I would like to deal with the internet and how IPR is being affected by the internet, because many of the cases that come before all of you in the Commercial Court Act could be related to the internet, how you exercise jurisdiction, etc. So I would like to come to that straight away. Okay, before I come there, let's look at designs. Designs is a very simple thing. If a design is registered, no one can pirate that design and it has to be protected. Let's look at a simple case of a design. For example, this teapot. This is a very unusual looking teapot. This design, if it's a registered teapot, no one can make a teapot which is similar. Design is meant to protect very small innovations, small manufacturers, SMEs, small scale industries. They can obtain these designs for innovative products and then try and protect them. Piracy of a registered design is not permissible under the Act. You can get an injunction, one can get an injunction and damages, etc. can be granted. For example, let us look at this judgment. This is important. This was a case where the famous designer Ritu Kumar had filed a case for one of her well-known designs. And the court held that because of Section 15 of the Copyright Act, if a product is manufactured more than 50 times and the design is not registered, then you cannot claim copyright in that design. So therefore, the injunction was refused. So the way in which this operates is, if a person has made a new design, it is compulsory to get it registered. You cannot claim a copyright in the design without registering it. So that's what Section 15 says. Under Section 15, if the design is reproduce more than 50 times, the copyright in the said design gets exhausted. So if the design is not registered, then it can't be protected. Carlsberg is again about a beer bottle, and I'm sure many of the persons who consume these products are aware of them. Now let us come to a very important aspect of the internet and IPR. This is one of the recent judgments of the Delhi High Court which I rendered. It was a case of defamation which was filed by Swami Ramdev. Now the case was that there was a book which was written in which there was a lot of allegations made against him. That book itself was injuncted by the Delhi High Court. However, somebody made a video of the content of that book and put that video online on YouTube. So the plaintiff filed a suit before the Delhi High Court and sought an injunction against Google, saying, please ask for the video to be removed from the YouTube platform. Google and Facebook argued that we will remove it only for Indian users and not in foreign jurisdictions. And they said that the Indian court does not have the jurisdiction to give an injunction which will operate globally. As you all know, when we open YouTube, we can watch any video which is there on YouTube. So if we want to remove it from YouTube, they said we will do what is called geo-blocking, and not global injunction. So this created a lot of this legal issue was raised by the defendants, and the question was whether Indian courts can direct Google to remove it globally. And it was a very complex case involving very complex legal issues of constitutional rights, because free speech was also raised. And one interesting case in Canada and US was cited before the court, and that was called Google versus Equistech. What had happened in this case was there was a pirated, counterfeited product being sold in Canada, and the plaintiff had filed a suit in Canada. The defendant did something very smart. The defendant agreed to the injunction, but what they then did was they moved their office outside of Canada and they blocked the counterfeit product only for Canada. Now, Equistech went to court and said, look here, there is an injunction from him selling these products, counterfeit products on the website. But now it is being offered in the US and other countries. So give a global injunction. The Canadian Supreme Court of British Columbia granted an injunction which was global, but Google challenged the Canadian Supreme Court's order in the District Court in California. And the District Court in California stayed the judgment of the Canadian Supreme Court. So in effect, what happened was, in Canada, the only Canada restricted injunction could be implemented and not a global injunction. So this decision was cited before the Delhi High Court. This may happen in any court nowadays, criminal cases, civil cases across the country, where things are being uploaded on Facebook, on YouTube, on Google, on Instagram, various other platforms. So what is the power of an Indian court? Can you grant an interim injunction or a final injunction asking the platform to remove it on a global basis? So what was held in this case was that if the information has been uploaded from India, then a global injunction can be granted because the cause of action is connected with India, and it can be stopped by Indian courts. So that was one of the most important judgments now on the issue of global injunction and geo-blocking. Now let us come to another interesting case. When you go online, one can register many domain names. Snapdeal.com, Amul.com, Dabur.com, Dabur.org, Amul.org, Amul milk, Amul butter, Amul cheese. You can keep on creating one after the other. So these companies realize that there are a large number of people who are going on registering domain names. So can a suit be filed against every domain name owner? How many thousands of suits can one file? So the cases have 2 or 3 suits have been filed in the Delhi High Court on all these trademark related cases, and the High Court has held that since these are well-known marks, the domain names should not be permitted to be registered by the registering authorities. These cases are still pending, and the final outcome is yet to be seen. But the court was of the opinion that these are well-known trademarks and you should not be allowed to register domain names of these marks. There are a lot of jurisdictional issues that courts face in trademark related cases. The main thing in online is that it's very easy to hide the person who has put it up. It's very difficult to find the people who have put it up. Secondly, there are territorial limitations. It can be easily changed also. Instead of, for example, saying delhihighcourt.co.in, it could be delhihighcourt1.co.in, Delhi High Court 2. So how long will you keep on finding them and going on injuncting them? So this jurisdictional issue has created a lot of problems. And another issue that we face is that there are many of these platforms who come and say, we are only intermediaries. We are not liable to be overall, hauled up in trademark matters like this. We do not want to be, for example, liable in damages, etc. in all these cases. So there are a lot of challenges that courts are facing in the online platforms. And one of the main judgments of the Division Bench of Delhi High Court on this issue is Banyan Tree, where the court held that if the defendant has purposefully availed of, if you see here, it says purposefully availed of the jurisdiction of the court, then the court can exercise jurisdiction. For example, suppose a suit is filed in Mohali in the commercial court, and the court finds that the defendant is permitting, live streaming of a show on the internet, which can be viewed by viewers in Mohali, then the commercial court can exercise jurisdiction if there is purposeful availment. Suppose a book is being sold online and you can purchase it from that jurisdiction, then you can exercise jurisdiction there. So Banyan Tree is a judgment which holds the basic tests on jurisdiction. And that judgment is worth reading. This is another case where, there was a hotel called Millennium, and the defendant, one could sit in Delhi and book the hotel room called Millennium. The court said that on the basis of the extracts of the defendant website, which indicate that the defendant operates in Delhi, defendant services could be booked from Delhi. The court found that there was a specific targeting of customers in Delhi. Hence, the court had jurisdiction to entertain the suit. So this is Millennium and Copthorne. This is another very interesting case. Making a booking reservation, even if the same does not materialize, is part of carrying on business, in as much as the hotel which has taken the booking, even if it has not received payment, being unable to turn back a customer in pursuance to that booking. The defendants, by showing their websites, their location to be Delhi, are found to be attracting and luring the customers into believing that the hotels and resorts are at Delhi, though territorially speaking outside Delhi. So by applying the test of banyan tree, the court held that there was jurisdiction. This was a case where Juggernaut and the defendant was in New York, but they were targeting Indian viewers by, Indian tourists and giving details about various tourist places in India, etc. So even though the defendants are residents of a foreign country, the court found that it had the jurisdiction to entertain this matter. So this is another judgment. This is another case where, the defendants were rogue websites which were showing pirated movies. And the court said, all these are rogue websites, even though they may be based abroad, they have to be injuncted. And as and when a new rogue website comes up, the plaintiff can go to the registrar and ask for blocking of the website. So this is what is called a dynamic injunction, which was granted in this case by the court. In a large number of cases, we are told that, you cannot pass an injunction against the platform. For example, whether it is Amazon, whether it's Google, Facebook, Snapdeal, they say we are intermediaries. Now the question is, can the commercial court pass an injunction order against them? And if so, in what manner? So this is laid down in section 79. If you find, the question that the court has to consider is whether this platform is active or it is passive. If it is an active platform, they can be held responsible. If it's a passive platform, you will have to ask the takedown of the infringing or the objectionable video or image or whatever. Now, in this case, the key elements, some of the key elements to hold whether what is active, what is passive is, if the seller is identifiable on the platform, if there are reviews for the product. When we go on Amazon, we will find some products are supported by Amazon, lot of reviews are given, you make payment, then the packaging may be coming with the e-commerce platforms packaging. There are arrangements with various sellers on the platform. If there's a customer complaint, payment, who is taking the payment in this? All these are the factors which are looked at to decide whether the platform is active or it is passive. Now, can intellectual property disputes be arbitrable? Yes, they can be arbitrable, so long as it is in personam dispute. In rem dispute cannot be arbitrable. So if there is an invalidity of a patent, invalidity of a trademark, that can only be held in a court. But if there is a franchisee or a licensee dispute, it can be arbitrable. Now, coming to the commercial courts, as you all know, commercial courts are set up in more than 24 courts in the country, and the value has been reduced from 1 crore to 3 lakhs. And the twin test of whether the subject matter and the pecuniary jurisdiction is there has to be checked. If it is a commercial dispute under section 2C and the dispute is above 3 lakhs, it comes to the commercial court. And there are various strict timelines, as you know. These are the timelines in Commercial Courts Act. The way I look at it, it's possible to complete a suit within 1 to 1.5 years from the date of filing. In Delhi High Court, we are able to do that because we are strictly following the principles of Commercial Courts Act for pleadings, etc. There is only one bottleneck for final arguments, which hopefully, if we have more courts, that should be getting sorted. But we now see that within 4 to 6 months, the matter finishes admission denial, finishes pleadings, comes for issues, and within 6 months or 8 months after the issues are framed, the trial can be concluded. Now, this is the last aspect of my presentation, Specialized Forum for Intellectual Property Disputes. Last year, the IPAB was abolished. There were a large number of cases in the IPAB. This is the notification, 22nd April 2021. After that, the Delhi High Court has notified the IP division, and we have also framed new rules for the Delhi High Court IP division and High Court of Delhi governing patent rules. These are rules which are in addition to CPC and Commercial Courts Act. And in the last more than 2-3 weeks, we are functioning exclusively IPR division in the Delhi High Court with 2 judges dealing only with IPR matters. Our High Court has approximately 4,000 to 5,000 IPR cases. And we now expect that going forward, since the IPAB has been abolished, almost all courts will be getting appeals from Trademark Office, original petitions from Trademark Office and Patent Office. So it is more and more necessary for commercial court judges and high court judges to be very familiar with IPR matters. And in Delhi High Court, we have set up the IPR tribunal. These are the kind of cases which are heard in the IPR division. Appeals from Section 91 of Trademark Act, 72 of Copyright Act, 117A of Patent Act. Now all this will be coming to the High Court, these appeals. And these are all the original petitions which will be coming to the High Court going forward across the country. So we expect, and now what we've done in the Delhi High Court is to merge all IPR cases, even RFAs, FAOs, CRPs, CMAs, EFAs, etc. in the IPR division. And this was prepared after conducting a thorough analysis of various procedures governing the IPR regime in US, UK, EU, Japan, and Australia. And we held a very big seminar last week, 2 weeks back. And the features of all these rules you can always see. The rules are available on the Delhi High Court website. And we have given a large number of guidances for litigants, clients, lawyers, how to draft, how to compute damages, how to draft a patent suit, what all should be there in that. We have also provided for technical law researchers to be recruited by the IP division so that engineers and people who have chemistry, knowledge of chemistry, biotechnology will now be engaged by the High Court for assisting the judges. And this is in detail, all the patent suits and everything. And I would like to end my presentation with this. And I'm sorry, I was not aware of the platform on which this was happening. And that's why there may have been a little bit of a glitch in the initial stage.
Thank you so much, Justice Singh. Listening to you and looking at the presentation that you have made makes me feel so good this afternoon now. This presentation was intellectually motivating. The entire presentation was so engaging. I'm sure the judicial officers, kind of an entertainment to them as to how you have to enjoy the disputes which come before you. This presentation, in fact, focuses on that aspect as such. I have always urged the judicial officers that you must enjoy the work that you do, and in that particular process, you'll be able to contribute immensely as such. And therefore, this particular motivation, in such a pleasant, comfortable manner that you have presented, particularly the issue of global injunctions, so interesting, engaging at the global level as such. And therefore, the parameters of intellectual property disputes are not nationally or territorially limited. They are internationally focused in that particular context. My expression of gratitude to Justice Singh for sparing your time. I know how you are busy with the contributions that you're making as a judge and otherwise too. I would only say continue with this particular domain which you have created, virtually created a jurisprudence of its own. It has been a pleasure to listen to you and look forward sometime physically to have a presentation to you, to have the real joy of that. Thank you so much, Justice Singh, for being with us on this platform.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.